Hello. Oh, go ahead, Richard.
Welcome aboard, everybody. It's great to have everybody here today. This is probably one of the biggest turnouts we've had, and I think the reason is twofold. One, we sent an email to all 14,000 HypnoThoughts members. So if you've never been to SundaLive class before, it is absolutely fantastic to have you. And then, of course, the other reason, our guest tonight is David Snyder, who's one of the highest-rated conference speakers at HypnoThoughts every single year. And the first time I met him, he was in a Spider-Man suit, and the fun has not stopped. So I'm excited about him being here. And Scott, I'm going to type in the chat box. Will you introduce our guest tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. And Richard, mute your chat room because we can hear it beeping. Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday night. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Like Richard said, tonight's guest is David Snyder. Now, just a quick backstory. David Snyder and I have known each other forever. We've known each other as long as Richard Clark, David Snyder, and I all met on the same day at an event designed for hypnotists to share ideas for free. And it's wonderful that we are doing this tonight. David and I were teaching together and being taught by each other and being taught by others every Tuesday night for a number of years. And so it's really fun to have a guy who I've known for a long time on the show tonight. David Snyder, how are you?
I am amazing, Scott, getting better all the time, and thank you so much for having me. You know, I look at you and I keep remembering that day, that day back in Long Beach at the Student Union.
Yeah.
Where 4 or 5 guys walked in, this funky redheaded dude, this pale kid, and this guy who wouldn't stop smoking. Yeah. We just sat around shooting about, talking about, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And maybe we want to do that. And I look back and I tell this story every time I go to HypnoThoughts, because HypnoThoughts, and I give all the credit to you and Richard, is really the materialization of what we started in LA back in the early part of the century. And it's just amazing to see how you've taken it worldwide on a level that most of us have never even contemplated. At least at that time, we certainly didn't know what we were looking at. So, as thrilled as I am to be here and to share these things with you, and I'm looking at Richard manning the chat room, thank you for having me. I'm truly grateful to be here and to be able to, receive such a wonderful welcome from everybody. So.
And by the way, since I am manning the chat room, what I want people to do is ask you questions. Now, if you're not familiar with David's work, David is an expert in conversational hypnosis. There are a lot of people out there who hold themselves out as an expert on conversational hypnosis. I have not known David for as long as Scott, but I've known him I think I probably met you in about 2007, so probably 7 or 8 years ago. And he's always been intriguing to me, and I have always thought he was one of the best teachers of conversational hypnosis. So tonight is a great night to ask questions about stealthy methods of hypnosis. Is that a good starting point for you, David?
Always a good place to start.
And also, David's been an instructor longer than he's been doing hypnosis instruction. David's also a martial arts instructor, and I think that's important in what we're talking about tonight, because one of the things that I've watched David teach. I don't know how many dozens and dozens of times we've watched each other, and I've watched you teach some of the same stuff over and over just because of how we had things set up. You do a wonderful job of taking complex things and breaking them down into their parts, I guess. I mean, for lack of
because I'm not that smart. I have to figure out how to make it simple. I wouldn't be able to do it.
But you set it up wonderfully, much like a martial art, where first it's a punch and then it's a kick and there's a block and a punch, and then you get to the point where the person knows how to put these pieces together in different orders. So it's really fun to watch David teach, and like Richard Nongard said, he is consistently one of the highest rated speakers we have at HypnoThoughts Live, specifically for one of the reasons is that he gives the students what they want. And so if you guys are in the chat room right now and you want to hear about conversational hypnosis, you guys have questions about it, or want to send us in a direction first, go ahead, Richard Nongard.
So the first question I have is this. Tell me what conversational hypnosis is, and then the first question that already came in is, how do you get consent for conversational hypnosis? I think both of those are great questions, David.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, in my classes, we teach we all know about this concept called the hypnotic contract, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, in the world according to David, which is what I call our unique, twisted, psychotic approach to doing things, we have two kinds of hypnotic contracts. And both of them are in agreement, but one is very overt and above board. It's the one we're all familiar with, and that is simply, I'm the hypnotist, you're the subject, I promise to do everything in my power to get you the change that you came for and keep you safe. And your job is to simply follow my instructions to the best of your ability with the right attitude. We're all very familiar with some variation of that hypnotic contract. The other hypnotic contract is an unconscious agreement, actually, between a human nervous system and another human nervous system. And the form it takes is actually very, very simple. I give an instruction, you comply. If they do what you tell them, then you have a contract. It's really that quite simple. Now, how do you leverage that? It's very simple. You have to remember that the human nervous system is always pleasure-driven or pain-driven, and the simpler and more and less threatening the instructions, the more rapidly the system tends to comply because it gets what it wants. And that's the secret. Every human nervous system on the planet wants to feel good.
Wait, break that down again, because I think that's worth repeating. That's really useful. The simpler it is, the less threatening it is.
The simpler it is, the more readily and pleasure or feel-goody it is, the more rapidly the nervous system tends to comply. Nothing feels better to the human nervous system than having itself reflected back to it.
Right.
Right. And that particular pattern manifests at every single level of the human nervous system, at every single level of human experience. So when you get consent, the idea is to remember that the systems that I teach have tremendous potential for misuse, but I don't train those people. Okay, but I'm not a hypnosis cop either. As a rule, the people who are going to use this with malevolent intent don't stay around my trainings. They don't have the patience for it. Even as simple as our stuff is, you can feel the energy coming off those people the minute they walk in, and it's not a fit for them. Our job is to simply find out what people actually want and show them in very clean, simple, pleasure-laden ways how to get what they want by doing what we want them to do. And as long as we can do that in a way that their nervous system calibrates that they're getting it, they will pretty much do what you want them to do out of default.
Great, great. So what you're talking about makes sense to me. And as you're explaining it, your contract that's more covert, are there times where you give an instruction, they follow, you give an instruction, they follow? Does that get broken, and then what do? How far do you back up to reestablish? What's that look like?
I'm going to pay attention to the responses I'm getting verbally and non-verbally from people. And remember that the body and the mind always answer first before the words come out of the mouth. So many times, if you're paying attention properly and you've done the state control work, which I know you have been thoroughly trained in, we have pretty interesting stories that we won't mention on this particular, as they see the blush coming up on Scott's face.
Yeah, a little bit. Oh,
right? But I do tell those stories in our covert trainings because but be that as it may, they're good stories. They're very good stories. And and coming from somebody who had absolutely no idea. See, I'm opening a massive loop here. Everybody was, what the hell did you teach this guy, right? Considering you didn't actually know what the ramifications of what I was teaching you were going to be.
Right.
Right, and the rest is kind of history. And fortunately, we documented it. But getting back to when I'm watching and paying attention to another person, I'm not just paying attention to them on a visual level. I have connected proprioceptively, and there's a big word I'm throwing out there, with their system. If the science that backs up what I'm teaching is at a site called heartmath.org. Now, a lot of people, I've mentioned it many, many times over the past few years, the science behind heart entrainment, or they call coherence, is irrefutable. It's incredibly powerful, and it's the basis of the conversational system that we teach. The last thing we're going to teach you is language, because the most powerful modulator of hypnotic experience is the body. So when I connect with somebody, I'm going to know by the feeling changes in my body, as well as the feelings I generate within them, what perceptual filters they're going to bring to bear on whatever I say. And if I get a disconnect, then I know I have to back up and pace and pace and pace until I've got the feeling back that I want them to have. Does that make it clear?
Good question.
It does to me, but yeah, go ahead, Nongard.
Let me ask you a question, kind of in practical terms. I know now you work with your wife, who is a chiropractor or acupuncturist. So you're working you're working in her clinic with her, and you're dealing with medical issues, along with emotional issues, along with behavioral issues. How can we conceptualize this conversational hypnosis as more than a party trick? What type of client makes an appointment with David Snyder?
Usually a lot of people who see me on YouTube and nobody else has been able to help them. I credit a lot of the things that I do, even though he's not a conversational hypnotist. I learned a tremendous amount from Stephen Parkhill, the man who wrote Answer Cancer. And for many years, I was doing my conversational hypnosis in a separate funnel as I was my regression type hypnosis, dealing with chronic illness and things like that. And over time, they became more and more integrated. But what people come to me for is anything that just is not responding. But what I've done is I've put a tremendous amount of techniques on the internet that people can try. And they've used these things on everything from math phobias to heart blockages, like arterial blockages, and all points in between. I have a gentleman down here at Scripps La Jolla. He works in the post-trauma treatment center. He uses it on 8 out of 10 things that come in through the emergency room because it's faster than drugs. So I get a lot of, I'm going to be working with a gentleman with chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. We've done herpes outbreaks, scoliosis, anything that is not responding to conventional treatment. Those are the people who either through the internet or through word of mouth, they're the ones that wind up in my clinic. And they don't care, Richard. They really don't care if I wave a dead chicken over their head, as long as they feel better when the session's done.
So what is your session? How much of your session is eyes closed work, and how much of your session with the person would be eyes open work?
Well, the hypnosis begins the minute they reach out for a consultation. Okay, sure. And we frame it in a very specific way. And I would highly recommend that anybody listening who sees patients frame what they do in the sense of the client has to prove themselves to you as the hypnotist, right? And we have a very specific way that we frame that, in that the blurb that we give is we offer all prospective clients a free 30-minute consultation to determine if your case is a fit for our methods. After you pass our evaluation, we'll discuss strategies for getting your situation resolved in the shortest amount of time possible. So just that frame shift starts to subtly create the idea that they have to follow instructions. Right? We remember, as a hypnotist, whether we're therapists, whether we're conversational operators, whether we're more advanced covert hypnosis, nothing happens until the client does what you say. They don't have to believe, they just have to follow instructions. So on a covert level, we need to start thinking not just in terms of the words that we use, but how are they going to, what has to be true in order for my words to be true? And then what has to be true for that to be true? So we start thinking, and I actually talked about this in my last training. After a while, you start thinking in presuppositions. You start thinking 4 and 5 levels of what has to be true for X, Y, and Z to be a natural consequence or a natural conclusion from that. And so that's how things evolved over time. That's getting out into the ozone a little bit. But the people who come to me, the way we look at it is I start screening them and I start testing them for compliance and layering in, utilizing conversational hypnosis the moment they come in. But I'm doing it in such a way that they're somatically engaged. That means I'm getting their body involved. They have no idea they're in hypnosis. Okay? The most classical thing that I do after I've had them talk about their problem for 20 minutes, which is important strategically, is I get them up and I do a heavy hand, light hand, right? That's the first one, because, again, just like most of us are taught, I want to know, are they more appropriate to direct suggestion or indirect suggestion? But most importantly, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for how rapidly and how easily do they follow the instructions. If you get someone that starts to go through a process and every time you stop speaking for a second or two, they stop doing what you've told them to do, that's someone who's going to bump out at every conceivable opportunity. You're going to waste a tremendous amount of time working with that client. Now, most of us are so starved for clients that we'll take the problematic ones because we just want to pay the rent, right? But we need to start changing that a little bit. We want to work with the people that we know we can help, and that's, in my clinic, that's what it's about. I know I can help anybody who can follow the instructions, but not everybody can or is willing to follow the instructions. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing is, and if you go to my videos, you'll see me do this all the time. It's a hybrid of NLP, conversational hypnosis technique. I'll break it down a little bit, but I could spend probably an hour unpacking all the subtleties linguistically that are going on in that. But what I do is I have them remember a time in their life when they felt tremendously good. I have them point to where they feel it in their body, right? That's already got the brain lit up differently than most hypnotists do. Because what we do most of the time in hypnotherapy or traditional hypnotherapy is a guy's a vegetable in a chair. The girl's a vegetable in the chair. They're just very quiescent in the chair. I want them active. I want as much of the cortexes and levels of the brain active and integrated and focused to the same result as possible. And that starts from the moment they walk in. So they point to it physically, and then have them reach out and imagine that there's a picture connected to that feeling floating in the space around them. From there, it's facilitating absorption and focus. I have them reach out with both of their hands and trace the edges of it. Make it bigger. Notice what happens to the feeling. And then as I ask these questions, every time I ask a question, they have to go inside to find the answer and validate that it's changed. So I'm fractionating them through this whole thing. They have no idea they're in a profound state of somnambulism, right? And yet they're moving stuff around, they're wrapping it around, they're getting all these spatial locations, and they're convincing themselves that something is happening. I don't have to do anything beyond that except tell them what to do, because I'm conditioning them through that give and take also to comply to my instructions, while at the same time I'm gauging their willingness to do it.
And let me just interrupt you real quick. I know some people have joined us a little bit late. Every Sunday night we get together for a free hypnosis class. Scott and I host it. We often have a guest. Tonight, if you just tuned in, our guest is David Snyder, who is in Southern California and is one of the highest rated hypnothought speakers every year. So welcome aboard if you've just joined us. And the cool thing is that we always have our guest guide us through a hypnosis session, which we'll do at some point, so you'll have a chance to experience hypnosis as well. Scott?
Yes, Richard?
Well, that was like I'm turning it over to Scott.
Oh, that was turning it over to me. Well, going off what you were just saying there, Richard, before I ask David a question, not only do we have our guest walk us through hypnosis, but whenever possible, we have our guest offer products and services at a tremendous discount.
No, you can't have them.
Okay.
Again, of course.
Actually, it's too late because I already posted your free conversational hypnosis.
Curse you, non-guard!
That's right. Free. Guys, I want you to pay attention to the generosity of David Snyder, and we really do appreciate it. When we were talking about doing this, we said, we want something like a discounted thing, something like that. And he said, I'll give you something discounted, but I'd like to give you something free, too. He gave us one of each. It's really, really cool of him. So up above, where you guys, the regulars, you know where it is. Above this video, there is a link to click on, and you get more of David. So, we're 15, 20 minutes into this conversation now, and if at the end of it you haven't had enough, that's where you go to get more free stuff.
By the way, the thing about it is there was so much free stuff. Instead of putting it on our HypnoStore website like usual, I said, I can't do that. That'll take me all day. And so it takes you right to David's page, where there is a tremendous amount of audio, video, transcripts. It is, in fact, a complete course. David, what's one of the highlights of that course? I mean, what do you like to teach people that they can sort of take as a takeaway from any any class you do or interview you do? I mean, lots of hypnotists are watching right now. What's something that perhaps they haven't thought about before, or something they haven't done before, that they could start doing today that would bring value to the people they're working with?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not sneaky, but I don't know. I'm debating on whether to just do it to you and then explain it later, or to explain it to you and then do it. Usually it's better to just have you have the experience and then go back. But one of the things that I really do want to get out there to everybody, regardless of whether you've been doing hypnosis 20 minutes or 20 years, have fun with what you do. Be passionate about what you do. Get playful. Remember, as many of us are educators, and Scott will verify this, I was teaching hypnotists for free for over 10 years. Okay, I know what trainings are out there. HMI used to send people to our meetups, and then it was called a Sleepwalkers event, but they would send them to our meetings in LA and have us sign off that they attended the class for extra credit. So I've seen what every system is teaching. I know how they teach. I know from the bottom of my heart, as good as those curriculums are, there is no, I repeat, there is no training on the planet that will prepare you for dealing with human beings in their natural habitat. They can give you a foundation, but just like Michael Tyson says, everybody got a plan till they get hit, right? So when you get in that room, you have a set of principles and a set of guidelines that you were taught. And yes, every now and then the client actually does follow the process. But many times, some of the biggest discoveries I've had that I've shared with the world and have really changed my life happen when things didn't work. And I want you to really understand that when things don't work is an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity for you to get really friggin' creative and start getting really curious. And the more curious you become, the more rapidly you'll gain that facility and that ability to just roll with the punches that every hypnotist covets and every hypnotist needs if they want to be effective. And that's really just that mindset, that there's two kinds of people that we deal with, and Scott can validate this, and I'm sure Richard himself has seen this. There's two kinds of people I've seen in the world of hypnosis. We have the achievers, and we have the chronically overtrained. Okay? Now, they have a lot of things in common, one of which is the achievers in life know that they're never done, which is exactly the same as the chronically overtrained. They know that no matter how much they know, no matter where they go, no matter how many people they study with, there's always more to learn. The fundamental difference is that the achievers know they have enough to start. The chronically overtrained can't start until they're finished, but they're never finished, so they never start.
That is so true. You know, I offer a 6-hour course on anxiety and hypnosis, and somebody on our ICBCH forum just the other day said, well, "Wait a minute, how can you teach somebody to deal with hypnosis, deal with anxiety in just 6 hours?" Well, that presupposes that they came to the course with zero knowledge. Mm-hmm. And it also presupposes that some knowledge can't help you to begin. And if I waited until I was always ready to work with every one of my clients, I would never work with any clients. And so I think that we need to recognize that any professional who takes a course, every course somewhere has to be their first course, and they're always going to add to that. Mm-hmm. And somebody who takes for example, the HMI free course, or the course that Scott offers at HPTI, or the ICBCH Gold Level course, is going to have the skills necessary to begin helping people, even if it doesn't give them all of the skills to solve every world problem.
Amen, brother.
And if you extrapolate that out to things that are more product-oriented, whether it's your website or your first hypnosis recording MP3 or a book or whatever, they say a work of art is never finished, it's abandoned, right? And I remember for years saying, I'm not ready to make recordings yet. And I spent a couple years seeing clients say, I want a critical mass of data. I want a critical mass of data. I want more before I do it. And then I finally said, okay, I just got to start making stuff. And I started making stuff, and I was really proud of the stuff I was making. And I said, okay, this is good. And I go back and I listen to it, and some of them are good and some of them aren't, if I'm candid. But that's what growing up is. That's what evolving is. That's what maturing is. That's the progressive discovery of our own ignorance. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so the idea of you're going to learn more by getting started than you will just taking classes. And obviously the three of us are very pro-education, pro-traditional education, and supplementing that with getting out of the classroom and applying the stuff in the real world, so you see what parts do overlap and what parts need creative problem solving.
Yeah. Once you've got a source for the education that you need to balance that with just going out and doing stuff. Whether you charge or not charge, get out there and just hypnotize as many different people in a fun, playful way. This is the other thing, is everybody looks for something serious to be their first go-round with hypnosis, and so they walk in and have all these tools, and then you have the screaming ab reaction, because that's how the universe works, right? They always come out of nowhere, which I get real excited, by the way, when they start having ab reactions, because that means what I'm doing is working. But start with fun stuff. Go out, play with it. Just play with as Brian David Phillips calls them, imagination games. Frame them as little games. Look how cool your mind is. And from any of that, you'll start to get just the reps over and over and over again. And what we've started doing in our training funnel, just to make sure that these people know that they're going to be gauged on what they produce. We've actually started having people keep track of how many interventions, how many inductions, how many funnels. Because when I teach things in silos or stacks of techniques. So everything builds on what went before. And so they literally log every time they do an instant induction, every time they do a gray room, every time they do a magic frame, every time they anything. And at the end of the class, they have to turn it in.
Sure.
They give me a copy. They keep a copy because they're going to know when they walk out of that class how much work they've actually done. And that, in and of itself, is a tremendous, tremendous confidence builder because you've walked that path.
All right, a couple questions in the chat room here. Number
Sure.
one, you have a degree in anthropology, and I'm assuming that's because you have a perspective that comes from an anthropological vantage point, which I would definitely agree with as well. Did you study anthropology at all?
No. I think I did study acupuncture though.
Yep. There you go, an A word.
Kind of, yeah, an A word, yes. And I'm a type A personality, but that's.
I thought you were about to say you were an A word, and I was going to say don't be
an A
hard
word
on
actually.
yourself.
I have been. That's kind of like my term of endearment from my wife most of the time. You asshole. Anyway, but
question number two: have you ever done stage hypnosis, David?
Watch my videos. I'm doing therapeutic stage hypnosis all the time. The difference is that I don't do. I've done a few parties and stuff like that. I've studied stage. I teach hypnotic presentation skills. In fact, we just finished a class on that last week. And that's not hypnotizing people on stage. It's hypnotizing the audience from the stage. And so it's very much all about installing and I don't consider myself a motivational speaker so much as a transformational one. I want to be able to, from that audience, I want my students from that audience to be able to dramatically guide an audience through profound changes, covertly and overtly. And so I have done stage. I've trained in stage. In fact, if you look at some of Mark Cunningham's early stage hypnosis videos, you'll find me lurking about in there somewhere. So I've done it. It's not my focus.
I'm going to have to go break out the VHS tapes and look for you.
I'm in there once or twice.
He's about, what, 30 pounds heavier, though?
About 30 pounds heavier, yeah. Actually, at that time, yeah. And I actually got heavier after that phase. I actually ballooned up another 30 pounds, and finally when I got around to losing the weight, I dropped in total about 70 pounds.
Wow, I didn't know it was that much.
Sorry?
How did you lose weight? Since HypnoThoughts, I've lost 21 pounds, and so I'm always curious when I meet other hypnotists. I put on a lot of weight because of my foot surgery, and I couldn't walk, and I wasn't active. Got up to 230 pounds, and my goal is to get back to 190, and so I've been dropping the weight since HypnoThoughts. How did you lose the weight?
The weight came off for me through a combination of actually what I call it alchemical work, which is basically hypnotherapy directed at myself, and a combination of HCG, which is a human chorionic gonadotropin process, but not the one that Kevin Trudeau was busy promoting in his book and stuff like that. We actually got our hand. My wife has a PhD in biochemistry, so when we look at these things, we look at them very differently. We looked at the original 1950s protocol, which has only 2 phases instead of 4. And we tested it clinically in the clinic. The original 1950s protocol called Pounds and Inches by Dr. A.T.W. Simeons. And as we were going into this process, the one thing that became apparent very, very early on was that we were seeing tremendous amounts of people who the weight was coming off. The HCG will take the weight off everybody. The problem is, as soon as they get off of it, or even if they get through the process, it comes right back. And the reason it came back in everybody but me was that nobody was doing the emotional clearing work. And that, at the end of the day, is, again, our stock in trade. The brain, the mind is doing things, and the weight is never the problem. The weight is a symptom. So we can do all kinds of things to take that weight off. But if we're not dealing with the reasons why we put that weight on in the first place, chances are nothing you do is going to stick very well.
Okay, now I've lost, like I said, 21 pounds. I have 19 to go, and I've been plateaued here at 209. And so tomorrow I'm going to go to Costa Rica, and I'll be back on Friday. And you think that'll help me get emotionally clear?
Hell no. But you will get some exercise, that's for sure. Actually, traveling is one of the biggest, and especially the lifestyle you lead, where you're jet setting. Last time I talked to you, like 2 days ago, you were on your way to Japan. You might even still be there for all I know. That kind of traveling will pack the weight on you. So unless you're taking really, really significant steps to maintain what you're doing, you're fighting an uphill battle. But that again goes back to, have you done the emotional clearing work? Have you changed the self-image to one that supports a healthy eating plan? Have you neutralized the reasons why you put the weight on in the first place at a psycho-emotional level? Have you changed the identity? In fact, again, we're coming up on halfway through the thing, so I usually say this at the beginning of a training. But what I'm going to do is, if all the questions that people have is here, we have time for this. So again, I'm going to take you as far as I can and answer as many questions as I can, and then show you guys where to go next, if that's okay. Would that be all right for most of you guys out there?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So that's how I did it. Okay, I understood, and I found that actually, if you look at what Simeons was doing in his 1950s protocol, a lot of the foods seem to have a health or a weight maintenance effect even after you get off the HCG. They seem to have less impact when they become part of your staple diet, even though you're eating much higher quantities. They still seem to have a very significant weight stabilizing effect. So we've done that. Was kind of where we started with the emotional clearing and changing how we eat. And I had to realize growing up that it was an ongoing process for me, because I grew up, we would get this massive plate of food that would feed a starving child or a starving family in Ethiopia for a solid year as an individual serving. So that's how I grew up. And the problem that we have many times is the things that actually contribute to our weight problem are things that we took as being normal growing up. And we have to completely go back and say, whoa, that was a common occurrence, but it's not normal, and we need to go back and really make those adjustments as well.
Yeah, I actually give a talk at one of the drug rehab centers, at any of the drug rehab centers, on anything can become the new normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's changing your belief system about yourself, changing your diet, starting or stopping doing drugs, and anything in between,
mm-hmm.
it can become normal. And yes. Nothing feels completely normal at first, but it can feel different, can be a good kind of different, and the feedback
mm-hmm.
can just be, let's get you ready for this so that as this is changing, you can make this the new normal that is sustainable,
mm-hmm.
not a temporary process for a result.
Mm-hmm. You actually said something. I came to your training on addictions a few months back, and you actually said one thing that actually helped me tremendously, and I'm going to paraphrase it. I'll probably mangle it. But you basically were telling a story, and you were saying that 99% of the time you are better resourced, you are completely normal, you're more in control than anyone around you. But 1% of the time you're completely insane, and you go nuts. And that 1% is what we use to validate whether we're succeeding or not. Yeah. And I find that to be true. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only difference I say is it's a single-digit percentage, and it's a different single-digit for 2%, 1%, 7%. But yeah, I mean, it's 90-something% of the time you're awesome and incredible, and it's this single-digit percentage of the time that is getting all the attention.
Yep. And to me that helped me a lot, because as much as I've been doing this work, there's still things that my body just wants.
Sure.
And every now and then I look at something that I know I'm going to pay for later, and I hear that little voice, 1% of the time you're completely insane, but the other 99% you're better than everyone else. And more often than not, the fact that it refocuses me back on the 99% changes my response to that food. So I'm always learning, and that's the other thing. I can't stress that enough. My students, my clients teach me so much. And you will too, and that's the thing, is that's why I get excited when things don't go the way that we plan them, because that's an opportunity to find out how human beings actually work.
Yeah, we had an HPTI course I did on contextual psychology. It's still offered at HPTI, and I decided I would do a live session with a real person, and the unexpected happened, and he actually showed up for the session drunk, and it was literally the worst session I could have possibly done. Everything was stacked against me, and I thought to myself, I'm going to take this out of the course, right, when I edited it. And I thought, no, people need to see how the real world really is. And so he actually came back for the second session, and I thought for sure he will have failed. And it turned out he actually did well. And the second session made me look like the world's greatest hypnotist. Mm-hmm. This was all by accident. I went from being the worst hypnotist to the best hypnotist in a 24-hour period. And it really had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with the reality of the situation. Now, somebody asked a question, Linda did. Did you create emotional clearing hypnotic recordings, or did you simply use affirmations, or was there some other technique you used, David?
I used the gray room. There was some other techniques that I used. You'll see, the gray room. I did not invent the gray room. First and foremost, I did not use affirmations as we understand them. I used the gray room a lot. I used my spinning process a lot. I used a lot of
Use that term about 4 times.
What term?
Yeah. Walk them through what the gray room is. I know what it is, but explain to them what the gray room process is. Actually, you know what? What if it's all right? What if you walk everyone through the gray room process at the end of it? Let's wait a few minutes and let's do that, because it's a wonderful technique.
That can be our hypnosis session at the end of tonight's podcast.
So when you were doing the gray room or whatever technique for everyone else, were you recording it and listening to it? Were you saying it to yourself? Were you imagining it? Logistically, what did you do?
At first, I did a recording, but then I started to screw this. This is not what I do with my clients. Why the hell am I doing it with myself? And this is, again, where in the world, according to David, where you'll see some significant changes in how I approach hypnosis, which has a lot of stage elements to it, and that's the idea of somatic engagement. The idea is, if we all know that anything that, and again, this is an old chestnut that's been around forever, anything that presupposes a trance causes a trance. And everybody goes, yeah, that's right. And then you ask them what it means, and they go, because NLP loves to complicate shit. But anything that relies on trance in order to manifest has to cause the trance first. When you played pretend as a little kid, right? Nobody told you to close your eyes and relax until you couldn't open them anymore. You just went, right? And everybody remembers what it was like to be a little kid. In fact, you'll hear me ask the audience, how many people have ever been little children? And right away, you can tell right from the get-go who's going to be a player and who's not. Because the ones who are going to be resistant or who are going to have smart guy syndrome, you're going to see them go,
right.
The rest of them will laugh and they'll go, I was a kid. And then we start talking about how we play pretend. Our processes work because we get playful and we play pretend and we get the body involved. 3 levels. We have vivification, construct, and strategic suggestion that are the building blocks, and they're all in the gray room. So when I started working on these things, I was doing a combination of gray room work, magic frame, which I often use right after gray room, and you'll see it on a lot of my videos, and then I would go into self-directed regression. And basically what happens there is it's basically the abreactive affect bridge technique. I would find something that made me feel bad. I would point to where I felt it, and I would amplify it. And I would just go head first into it, and I would let those feelings come up and let them come out, doing what Richard likes to call mindfulness, but allowing all those feelings to percolate out. And literally just because I had done so many regressions on so many different people, I was comfortable doing that with myself. And I still had to make some modifications because there's a conscious mind that wants to analyze shit, right? And that's one of the big challenges when you're doing self-directed regression. But after a while, weird stuff started to happen. I mean, like really weird stuff. The body would start to contort, it would start to move, it would start to do all of these things. There were times when I laid in in my room on the bed for an hour twitching like somebody stuck a car battery up my butt or something, because the body was releasing all of these very intensely held emotional things. And the key is we don't actually have to know what they are. That's the cool part. More often than not, the information we need to resolve this stuff is behind the emotion. We're so busy stuffing the emotion down, we don't get to the perspectives and the information that would allow us to reprocess that experience anyway. So for me, it was a combination of the nice thing about the gray room is you don't have to know what any of that shit is.
Often called blind therapy, right?
Yes, often called blind therapy. The best part is once you have that construct, you can do anything you want within that construct, and they're profoundly somnambulistic. And you can go into deep regressive work. You can go into more blind therapy if you want. You can go into there's some stuff that I've blatantly stolen from Soviet sports psychology. The same monogenic system that they used to sweep the Olympics back in the 70s and 80s. There's a book called Red Gold that if you can find a copy of that book, anybody who does sports hypnosis, performance enhancement, you need a copy of that book. Okay, it has got some of the most powerful change processes that can be both self-directed and as part of your hypnotic therapy silo I've ever seen. And so when you see things like the procrastination blaster or what I call the garden, those are directly stolen from the book Red Gold, which by the way is not openly available. It costs about $200, but if you can get a PDF, it's worth its weight in gold.
I'm actually looking on Amazon and not seeing any used copies anywhere. Yeah. And I would have to go check Abe Books, which is my source for rare and out-of-print books.
Yeah, I'm constantly just accumulating information and sorting through it and field testing and trying to find out new and better ways to do things. And the best part is, and you guys know this, after a while, after 200-300 patients or clients or whatever, certain patterns start to emerge. And the patterns become a reliable way of guiding and navigating process.
I heard a doctor I was talking with. I asked this doctor about something that I had read, and I said, "This seems kind of hokey to me, but explain it to me and all that." And she said to me, she goes, "No, that's hokey bullshit." And I said, "Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was something that was based on something." And she said, "Look," and this is the real takeaway that she said. She said, "Everywhere I sit in my life, next to me is a pile of research or reading on this topic. And so I'm very well informed on it, and I'm more informed on it every single day. So if you have any questions on it, please don't go to the internet. Go to me. I can sift through it faster."
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked the idea that this woman, who was legitimately recognized nationally as an authority, and and maybe even an expert, in the medical field, top 10, top 20 in the country kind of person, everywhere she went was a pile to make it easy for her to learn more. And I just love that as an idea that, and going back to the idea of the people that are, the really successful versus the overly trained, she's doing and still learning, and I love that. But we are quickly running out of time. So what if Richard and I turn off our mics and our cameras so that we are not distractions, and you walk everyone through the gray room?
And
I will be happy to do that.
Again, some people have tuned in late. You can go back and rewind and watch the beginning. Every Sunday night, we get together for a hypnosis class, interview some people. Scott and I share techniques. We guide everyone through a process of hypnosis. So thank you for joining us, and please let your friends know about this class next week. It's been great to have such an awesome turnout for David Snyder.
Thank you guys so much.
We present David Snyder.
Ooh. Ladies and gentlemen, please make yourselves comfortable. Make sure your cell phones are off. Make sure that the cat's not going to run across the keyboard. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. And let that breath out with a sigh. Deeper and deeper with every breath you take and every beat of your heart. All I'd like you to do is relax. Let go. And listen to the sound of my voice. As you listen to the sound of my voice, any sounds you hear other than the sounds of my voice, or simply the sounds of your environment or my environment, perhaps Richard or Scott doing something in the background, they're not going to disturb you or distract you in any way. In fact, all they're going to do is signal you to relax, to let go, and just go deep. So in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to focus all of your attention on the lids of your eyes. And I'd like you to begin to relax those tiny muscles in your eyelids. I'd like you to relax them so fully, so completely. Make them so completely relaxed that you couldn't actually open them without putting more tension back into them. And when you know you've got them that relaxed, all I want you to do is give them a little test, just to be sure. And then stop testing. Let that level of relaxation flow from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes. Deeper and deeper with every breath you take and every beat of your heart. Just allow yourself to let go, drifting, dreaming, floating, guided by the sound of my voice. So in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'd like you to use that amazing imagination of yours. And I'd like you to imagine, if you would, for me, that while keeping your physical eyelids stuck all the way closed, what I'd like you to do now is use that imagination and open only your imaginary eyes. Each and every time I say open your imaginary eyes all the way up, all I want you to do is open those imaginary eyes as bright and as wide as you can. When you close those imaginary eyes all the way down, all I want you to do is allow those imaginary eyes to close all the way down, 10 times deeper with each and every closure. I just want you to allow those wonderful sensations, those wonderful feelings of relaxation to double, triple, maybe even quadruple. So in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your imaginary eyes all the way up. Close those imaginary eyes all the way down, deeper and deeper and deeper still. Open those imaginary eyes only all the way up. Close those imaginary eyes all the way down, deeper and deeper and deeper still. Drifting, dreaming, floating, flying, any sounds you hear other than the sounds of my voice, simply the sounds of your environment. Every word I speak, every breath you take allows you to go deeper and deeper and deeper still. And the best part is that no matter how far inside you travel, no matter how deep inside you go, you'll always be able to hear my words, follow my instructions, and obey my commands, because you realize at the very deepest level of your mind, your body, your soul, everything I say and everything I do is for you, to give you the life you want, the way you want it, by your standards and your definitions. So one last time, I'm going to ask you to open those imaginary eyes all the way up. Close those imaginary eyes all the way down, deeper and deeper and deeper still. Now for this next part, because there are so many of us out there going through trance separately together, I want you to do this at your own rate and speed and allow your unconscious mind to just follow along at whatever rate is natural for you. In a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to begin to relax that mind of yours just as deeply as we've relaxed your body. We're going to do that in a very, very special way. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to begin to imagine the alphabet backwards, starting with the letter Z. With every breath you take and every beat of your heart, all I'd like you to do is allow those letters to become more and more relaxed, fully out of your mind, out of your body, out of your spirit. Turn the volume all the way down. Make them smaller and darker and harder to see. And many times when we relax that completely, we get so relaxed, we get so into ourselves that we just don't want to speak, and that's okay. However rapidly or slowly you go deep inside, I just want you to continue to relax, to let go, realizing that just like when you were a little kid playing pretend, anything you can play with, anything you can point to, anything you can imagine inside, you can create. So in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I want you to use that amazing imagination of yours once again. And I'd like you to begin to imagine that floating above the top of your head is a beautiful ball of glowing orange fluid. Beautiful glowing golden energy. And with every breath you take and every beat of your heart, that fluid begins to flow down through the top of your head, down through your scalp, through your facial muscles, through your neck and your shoulders, all the way down from the top of your head to the very tips of your toes. Now this fluid that you're experiencing, this warm, soothing energy in the world, according to David, we call this the universal solvent. And as it fills you up like water or liquid would fill up a hollow glass tube, the universal solvent has some very, very, very special properties. You see, like a magnet is drawn to metal, like water soaking into a dry sponge, the universal solvent seeks out any place in your physical body, any place in your emotional body, any place in your mental body where you're harboring any stress, any strain, any less than positive experience. The things you consciously remember and understand. Most importantly, the things you unconsciously remember and understand. The parts of you, the experiences that you've had, the resistances, the beliefs, the limitations, the less than positive feelings that have been locked away, stored somewhere in your body, without your conscious knowledge, without your conscious consent, that have been waiting for a time when you could go inside, come back inside, and tell your system what to do instead. So all I'd like you to do now is you allow that fluid to fill you up, fill you up, fill you up from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. All I'd like you to do is observe that process taking place, noticing like a magnet being drawn to metal, like water flowing into a dry sponge. Any place in your mind, any place in your body, any place in your spirit that you're harboring any stress, any strain, any limitation, any resistance to positive change. The universal solvent seeps into those areas like a magnet being drawn to metal, like water soaking into a dry sponge, and it begins to saturate, to dilute, to dissolve, to break up, to pull out and draw out of your mind, draw out of your body, draw out of your spirit any less than positive experience, conscious and unconscious, the ones you know about and the ones you unconsciously know about. holding them in suspension in that golden orange fluid. Well, at the same time, another level of your mind, another level of your consciousness, another level of your awareness begins to float up out of that physical body, floating higher and higher and higher still until you can actually, it's almost as if you're floating on the ceiling of your room. You can actually look down, see your body in the chair, look inside and see that universal solvent doing its work, doing its work, doing its work. And as you look deep inside, as you experience that process, some people, as they go through this process, they notice it's a lot kind of like peroxide. Sometimes you pour peroxide over a cut or a scrape and it fizzes and it bubbles. Some people get warm, some people get hot, some people twitch, some people have waves of emotion come up. Whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're going through right now, that's perfectly okay. Just allow those processes to take place. As they come up, they come out. As you feel them, you reveal them. As you reveal them, you heal them. Solved, dissolved, and resolved from the body. Solved, dissolved, and resolved from the mind for all the right reasons as your consciousness, your awareness begins to float even higher and higher and higher still until you find yourself actually floating and looking down at the very curve of the planet beneath you. And as you look around this place, it's like being in outer space, but there's something a little different about this place. It's not empty. It's not cold. It's not vast like you would expect outer space to be. It's warm, and it's safe, and it's comforting, and it's nourishing and nurturing in all the ways that are most important to you. In this place, in the world according to David, we call this the womb of eternity. And it's a place beyond time and space. That place from which the spark of you that is your consciousness, the part of you that's connected to all life and all living things, emerged. And from one day it will return. But in this place, my friends, you are connected to the source of all life, the source of all living things. And anything you can imagine, anything you can intend, must become true for you for all the right reasons. As you float about this space, feeling a sense of connection, feeling a sense of being loved and held and cared for, nurtured in all the right ways, there's a star off in the distance that blinks and glows. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a pet really happy to see its master coming home, how it jumps and it gets excited and it feels so happy to see that master because it hasn't seen you from its perspective in such a long time. As you look off into the distance, you see that beautiful star beckoning to you, twinkling, going brighter, more excited, more agitated, and you get that sensation of truly being welcomed back. And you find your awareness moving towards it faster and faster with every breath you take and every beat of your heart. That awareness just grows stronger and stronger, and beams of starlight pass over and around and through your body, and every place those beams of starlight begin to touch, you feel a cleansing, a healing, a nourishing taking place, as if a filter is being applied to every level of your mind, body, and soul. And at some point you begin to pass through that starlight and you feel a deep, deep, deep inner cleansing and inner healing, as if all the things that are the very best parts, they're the only things that make it through, and everything else is filtered away. And you find yourself in an amazingly cool place. You're in a dome-shaped room with pearly gray walls. And in the center of that room is a beautiful, roaring fire pit with a beautiful, roaring fire. And as you look around the room, you notice on the walls are what look like colored squares. And you instinctively recognize that one set of squares on that wall represent all the wonderful, amazing, powerful things about you. All the things that make you feel strong and confident, worthy and deserving. While those other colors, they represent all the less than positive things. The things that hold you back, the things that cause you to resist, the things that make you say things you don't want to say, that inspire you to do things you don't want to do, or speak when you should just not say a word. Things you consciously know about and understand, and most importantly, the things you unconsciously know about and understand. And because we're coming close to our time together, but in this place, time doesn't exist. I want you to reach out with your dominant hand and touch one of those squares that represents a less than positive experience. As you touch that feeling, or you touch that square, I want you to notice there's a place in your body where you feel it. And I want you to point to it. And when you're ready, I want you to reach over, rip that square off the wall, and begin to crumple it up. And as you crumple it up, I want you to notice that feeling in your body begin to shift and change, begin to morph, to loosen up. And when you're finally ready, you know it's ready, I want you to walk over to that fire pit, and all I want you to do is throw it in that fire. Feel that fire race up. Feel it jump in size and strength, force and magnitude. Feel that feeling in your body begin to shift and fade and diminish. Don't try to measure it. Don't try to manage it. Just allow that process to take place, to continue. And when you know it's done, try to bring the old feeling back and notice what happens instead. And when you're convinced it's not coming back, in fact, you may notice it only gets better, all I want you to do for the next 60 seconds is go through every part of this gray room. Make sure you look under all the positive squares, because sometimes that stuff gets misfiled. And all I want you to do is reach up with your dominant hand, rip it off the wall, crumple it up, throw it in the fire. Feel the release. Feel the rush of energy wash over and around you and through you, solving, dissolving, and resolving those things from the body, solving and dissolving those things from the mind. And just keep going until you know they're all done. Feeling every cell, every nerve, every atom bathed in everything it most wants and everything it most needs. Now you can remain in this place and you can return to this place anytime you want to, simply by playing pretend. And if you can point to where you feel it, you can change it. So in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 5. As I count from 1 to 5, you're going to find yourself returning to this place we call reality, bringing all these transformations, revelations, and educations with you, bringing with you a new sense of empowerment, a new sense of capability, a new sense of really being able to do this. Number 1, feel yourself returning to this place we call reality, bringing with you a brand new reality, a reality where you're the one that knows how to do this. Feel yourself floating down back into that physical body, a body that has been rapidly being cleansed and healed, purged, nourished for all the right reasons. 2, feel those little openings at the tips of your toes and the ends of your fingers beginning to open wide and allowing that universal solvent to drain away, taking with it all the stress, all the strain, all the less than positive experiences, leaving you fresh and cleansed and healed from the inside. 2, all of my suggestions from me to you to your very own unconscious mind are now 10 times more powerful, 10 times more pervasive, 10 times more permanent in every way, locked into that level of your nervous system that most desires, wants, can implement and facilitate these changes for the good of yourself and all concerned. Number 3, always at least 3 ways to overcome any situation, obstacle, or circumstance that you may face. Always at least 3 solutions to any problem you need to solve, and your other than conscious mind will now easily, effortlessly, and automatically generate those solutions in the quickest, easiest, most effective way for the good of yourself and all concerned. Number 4, because it's all for you, ladies and gentlemen. You asked for it. You gave me the time. You followed the instructions. You've obeyed the commands. You've tested the results. You've earned the rewards. It's true for you now. On the next count, you can emerge from this state only at the rate and speed you know you've got it. Only at the rate and speed that every level of your mind, body, and soul is in full agreement, full harmony, full accord with all the instructions, transformations, educations, and revelations that you've received, the ones you consciously know about and understand, and most importantly, the ones you unconsciously know about and understand. At peace with yourself, the world, and everyone in it. Feeling good all over, glad to be alive. Number 5, take your time. Come on back. Notice how good you feel.
A round of 3s.
3s in the chat room.
By the way, 3s, I don't know why, it's the way we clap in the chat room. A round of applause for David Snyder. Scott is holding up 3 3s. 2 3s.
If I'm holding up 3 3s, that's a whole different trick. Lots of fun.
It's all new to me. Cool.
Yeah, lots of fun. Remember, everybody, a couple of quick reminders. Number 1, above us in the video, right there on the website, is a link that will take you to David's site because there's just so much stuff. We couldn't port it into the Hypno store in a reasonable amount of time. That's how generous he's being, which we think is awesome. As I say every week, keep the requests coming, keep the suggestions coming. This is your time, and we've got this wonderful momentum of you guys requesting stuff, and we're bringing it to you. So keep sending me messages on Facebook if you want stuff. Anything you heard that you want to talk about tonight, obviously you can go to Hypno Thoughts and ask questions, and we can have chats and discussions there. Richard, I'll let you sign off and say once again thank you to David Snyder.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you very much, David Snyder. One of the great things about David is that he's one of the most accessible people on Hypno Thoughts. So feel free to post over there if you have any questions for David. Take advantage of both of those offers above, one for his free course, but the $500 Self-Mastery Supercharger course, I think he had it on a promo at Hypno Thoughts for 200 and some bucks, and I told him, got to be 97, and he said, okay. So that is not going to last long. That will be a flash sale. So take advantage of it today. You guys have been a lovely audience. We'd love to take you home with us, except we're all already home. David, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.